Hey, Simon.
Hello, Jim. How are you today?
I'm doing great. This is like the second podcast we've recorded in as many weeks. This is good.
It is. We're a high velocity MMM podcast situation at this moment in time. Unlike those old podcasts of yore that would take months and months and months to come out with. But no, it's exciting. I'm excited about today's topic as well. I think it's going to be a fun one. What are we talking about today, Jim?
Well, we're talking about this little known topic called marketing mix modeling. Maybe you've
Never heard of it.
Some people call it media mix modeling. And in
They
fact,
do.
we'll talk about that actually, probably. We might touch on that. But yeah, we're talking about MMM. We talked about it last time too with, Google's announcement of Meridian and all the excitement that they've stirred up. And then we're continuing on that topic and
Yeah.
a little bit.
For what it's worth, we are recording this right now when there's a lot of conversation happening around House and their claims of the very first experimental-driven MMM. So maybe we'll dig into that at some point in time too, because I think that's, I don't know, it was a convergence of MMM practitioners in the comments and quite the showing of dissent, which is interesting. But anyway, today I think we've got a fun topic to go into, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think so last week we kind of dove into some very kind of technical details and Meridian and some other open source stuff. I think today we're going to bring it up a little bit higher level and talk about marketing mix modeling more from sort of a high level view. What are marketers trying to think about how to use marketing mix modeling, how to incorporate them, how to make decisions with them, how to choose a vendor or how to decide, do we do it in-house or do I choose a vendor? All the kind of questions that marketers are trying to wrestle with now as, MMM is starting to take up a lot of headspace. And we have some experts with us today, not one, but two amazing guests to help us lay the groundwork for what's going on in marketers' minds today. Our first guest is a repeat visitor. She was first with us about a year and a half ago. Episode number 8, if you want to go back and listen to that episode, we were talking about testing, marketing testing, test and roll frameworks, a bunch of cool stuff there. And we're glad to have Elea Feit back with us. She has, I'm going to be a little bit lazy and repeat the intro that I gave last time because it worked the first time, so I'm going to go with it again. So Elea has a bachelor's in mathematics, a master's in science and industrial engineering, a PhD in marketing, and she's applied those learnings at companies like General Motors and Amazon and continues to train the next generation of marketers and analysts as an associate professor of marketing at Drexel University's LeBeau College of Business. And did I say LeBeau right?
Yeah.
It's not LeBeau.
Nope, LeBeau.
Okay, good. LeBeau.
We know because we have 3 buildings named after them.
Yes, exactly. So welcome back to the show, Elea.
Thanks for having me.
And we are also very fortunate to be joined by Karen Chisholm. Karen has more than 2 decades. Should I risk it and say almost a quarter century of experience?
No.
Okay.
Why, Jim? Why?
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So more than 2 decades of experience as a digital marketer and a digital and marketing leader for large multinational consumer packaged goods, CPGs. This includes more than 11 years at Kraft, 10 years at Diageo, makers of fine drinks like Guinness, Johnny Walker, Captain Morgan, and many more. And for the past 4 years has been the director of marketing effectiveness at Pernod Ricard. I screwed it up again. I'm going to have to edit that one out. Okay.
Oh. Jim's been practicing this for weeks, by the way. I'm like, what are you? He's got like a French accent going on. It's been a whole thing. But now the time comes and it's.
Listen, I had 4 years of French in high school. This is my one chance to get
one chance.
So let's try this again. Take 2. And for the past 4 years has been the director of marketing effectiveness at Pernod Ricard, bringing you premium wines and spirits like Jameson, Seagram's, Jacob's Creek, and many, many more. And she's also been co-chair of the Association of National Advertisers, Analytics, and Data Science Committee. So we have a powerhouse panel with us today to talk about what is on the minds of marketers with relation to marketing mix modeling or media mix modeling. And maybe we start there. I thought there was a really good line in the paper that kind of made that distinction between capital MMMs and lowercase m followed by 2 capital M's for media mix modeling. Actually, let me.
So forgive me for the intrusion. What paper are you talking about, Jim?
Exactly. I was going to take a step back and introduce sort of the main topic of what we're going to be talking around. So, Elea and Karen were both part of the Marketing Science Institute at the Advertising Research Federation. It's MSI and ARF for those acronym seekers. And they've been putting together an MMM initiative at the Marketing Science Institute to just explore MMM, how marketers are using them, and I'm sure they'll explain a lot more about that. And one of the outcomes of this was a paper, the MSI Blue Ribbon Panel Report, charting the future of marketing mix modeling best practices. And as another part of this initiative was a survey that was sent out asking marketers how they're using measurement methodologies, whether they're using MMM, how they're using it, are they increasing or decreasing, what challenges they face, all of these fun things. And so we wanted to kind of dive into those two things, the paper and the survey, and just understand what's on marketers' minds these days. So
yeah, I'll jump in and talk a little bit about MSI ARF. So Marketing Science Institute is a group of usually major advertisers like Pernod Ricard and a bunch of others. But now, more recently, some of the platforms are involved. So folks from Meta are involved, and also folks from analytics kind of vendor places like Kantar kind of places are involved in MSI in general. And MSI, maybe about 3 years ago, saw that MMMs were growing in importance and started this initiative to basically bring together academics who are working on MMMs and also industry professionals and experts like Karen to kind of chart what the future of MMM should be and to help kind of lift all boats to, make the practice of MMM better. So we have like a lot of meetings where industry professionals and academics get together and talk about what we think, and that was what resulted in this report. The survey was really, we wanted to go beyond our group. The working group is large. Like you can read in the back of the report all the names of the people who are involved in it. But we'd like to expand beyond that. So we did this survey. Sometimes we call it the temperature survey. The idea was to take the temperature of what people are thinking about in measurement. We hope to do it again in the future, like maybe every 6 months we could repeat this temperature survey and get a feeling for where people's heads are when it comes to ad measurement in general.
Yeah, and so I'm curious. Maybe we start off with the survey. I didn't take the survey, but I read through kind of the first page of the questions, and it was very nice, very simple. They're basically like 3 main questions, along with some other questions about like who do you work for, what sizes of company, that kind of stuff. But the questions were the main 3 questions were: which of the following tools does your company use for measuring marketing performance? And had a whole list of things from MMM to MTA, multi-touch attribution, to incrementality experiments, the kind of the things you would expect to be on the list there. And then it was, over the next 2 years, how do you expect your usage of each of the tools to change? And then the third question was, what are your biggest challenges in terms of developing a program for measuring marketing performance? And my first question was, I wonder, what is the biggest challenge that you saw from the data? Like, what is the thing that is holding people back?
Yeah, I had to dig that up before this call because we actually hadn't. So we're posting some results from the survey on social media. So if you look on the LinkedIn or the Facebook account for the Marketing Science Institute, you'll find some of the results. But that one we didn't prepare a summary of, so I had to go look it up. So the first thing that strikes me is all of them got at least 30% of people checking them. So these are all issues. It's sort of like there are problems across the board. But the number one was kind of consistency across the organization in the use of the MMM. Like, how are we all using it together to make decisions? Kind of a problem.
That's interesting. So it speaks to not the technical difficulties of building a model or the data quality issues, but like the organizational issues, the change management type of questions, right?
Yeah, well, I'm like a data fiend, so I was assuming that data would be top of the list, but because I like data, but nope, it was kind of consistency across the organization and how the thing is used and interpreted.
Right, and because the technical team can produce the results and make recommendations, but they are not the decision makers on what brands get money and what touch points get invested. And so if you want the recommendations of your marketing mix modeling to be followed, you really need the sponsorship at the top. So that's kind of what happens. And depending on how you're structured, especially if media buying is decentralized with the brand teams, it's really hard to follow the recommendations or switch budgets across brands. So I think that's probably what you're seeing in the results with like the sponsorship at the top, the use case of making sure people are following the advice.
Well, it's an interesting one in that I think, oftentimes we talk about measurement problems, and sometimes things are just like, that's not possible to do, right? And so there's these sort of impossible things, but more often than not, it does come down to the psychological problem and perhaps the storytelling associated with what is the point of this. And I think oftentimes it's very easy to get wrapped up in this, like, well, you need an MMM, and there are mandates for these things, or we need a holistic measurement solution. Was there any sort of depth on that? Was it just like I don't know, we're speaking French? No?
Sorry.
Yeah,
it was just to get the quick read.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know if there were any like interviews that were following up on like any folks who sort of shared why they were into this. Like, is it that it is, again, just as simple as my stories aren't connecting with people internally, or is it critically, and I think this is what I see more often than not, diverged expectations that are set by someone's own manifestation of what they believe it should do, not what it actually is designed to do. Because if you don't set the sort of expectation, people assume, or they make assumptions as to, oh, it'll solve for this thing, it'll do this thing. Even recently, we're talking Meridian, the things I'm seeing out there on LinkedIn, the takes are hot and wild and radically incorrect. And folks are out there being like, oh, this is going to actually, data scientists are going to go away. And I'm like, what? Did we read the same documentation? Because I didn't see that anywhere written in there that was an AI data scientist included, or I don't know, they're like, it's an experimental design. I'm like, where is the incrementality design? There's none. It's not part of this. So it's interesting. This one it's more of an observation than a question. But what other big takeaways did you see here in the report?
So I'll jump in on that one. The first question, as you mentioned, the first two questions were kind of this pair of a list of different kinds of measurement techniques, like everything from incrementality experiments to, and we actually split out incrementality experiments by those that like you're doing in-house or with a measurement vendor versus using the platform's incrementality experiments, stuff like, Meta's conversion lift, that kind of stuff. So just two questions. One kind of rates like, are you all the way from unfamiliar to a past user? So like, how are you in your journey with this tool? And the second question was, do you expect to do more or less of that in the future? And again, with this one, it kind of surprised me. It's like everything is across the board kind of high. Like everybody's doing everything all at once. And individual users are saying they're using, 4 or 5 of these different strategies. So it's not like there's shops where we use simple attribution rules and we don't do anything else. It's like we're all doing a little bit of everything. Is that consistent with your experience, Karen?
Yes, of course. Yeah, so we have a campaign scorecard measurement process where we're going to measure the creative lift, and so we'll do some testing. So there's a bunch of scores associated with that. We'll have some media metrics, and then we might run a lift in that using House. You guys talked about House. So we might do something with House or Circana and measure a lift there with a geo or a demographic target. And then we'll run a brand lift study once it's in, do that. And then finally, we do a marketing mix modeling. It's a little harder to do, multi-touch attribution in our industry. But yeah, so we're going to use all the measures and we're going to come back with a holistic story about this is our recommendation about continue to invest in this creative, continue to invest in this brand and these touch points. So you want more data points to inform. Does that make sense? So, and bigger companies have the resource to do lots of testing.
Well, and perhaps the key divide that I wanted to key in on, or to focus in on here, was the nature of in-platform incrementality versus out of platform, or largely speaking geo-based incrementality. It sounds like you're perhaps in a post-platform world at this moment in time. Is that fair, or are you using platform incrementality as well?
So of course, we're running platform tests, but we're not linked to sales, right? So we're not a retailer, so it's really hard for us to get conversion and sales data. And even before we have, they were talking about deleting cookies or cookieless worlds. The people would delete their cookies before we could say they served an ad and then link it back through the loyalty programs is really hard in our industry. So,
Well,
yeah,
you mentioned Circana there, and so I just wanted to maybe key on because thinking Circana, IRI, maybe even platforms like Crisp, right, which are sort of designed to complete, not fully complete, but to bring back signal associated with this, CPG transactions in these big retailers. Is that I guess is that an enabled signal you're able to use it, or just the inherent issue? Or sorry, as you were saying.
Yeah. So we're definitely using that as a signal. The problem with some of these tests, as you know, is so if we run 100 tests, we'll have results for 50 to 60 of them, and the lift can be 1% to 10%. So it's a small signal, and the decisions we're making are more focused on. I don't know how interesting this is, but we say we have lots of money, and we decide which brands get money, and then which touch points get money. So you need to do that technical thing. Remember the response curve. So you need to figure out if I have another $1 million, who gets it and why and what touch points. So when I do a lift study, it doesn't tell me that I'm at the top. So, and that I would get more profit from investing in Jameson versus another brand. But we use everything in conjunction because sometimes the marketing mix modeling results don't make sense. And then you have other data points to kind of build a story.
And I'm wondering if you are in a place where it sounds like you're in a good place where you're using all of these signals. But the thing that I've been hearing a lot lately from marketers is like, we need a unified framework, or, there's either this drive to get this unified framework where you just have this one simple dashboard that has that one number that tells you what to do, or, obviously simplifying that, but either that, or you have marketers that don't know how to deal with 10 different data sources that are all saying slightly different things. How do you deal with that
at Pernod? So we have this, so it's a little more manual than maybe your audience will want to hear about. But we definitely have
our audience of measurement nerds and people who are genuinely interested in the depth and granularity of the subject. So go deep.
I'm like, okay. So what we do is, of course, we run our MMMs internally. So we get those results. And once those come in, then we'll package it up for our chief marketing officer for, what are the learnings on campaign? And so, it's working with these demographics, or it's working in these markets, and these media buying tactics work. So for smaller brands, you might want to focus on geographies where you have high distribution and high velocity, for example. So that works better than for like a Jameson, which is a national brand. So we're going to package all of those learnings up for, say, 12 brands and bring that to the CMO. And it's a pretty manual process. And we're looking at, short-term sales lift in this platform and power scores and all kinds of things, and bringing it. So it's not like a dashboard. It's a PowerPoint presentation where we're manually filling it in, cross-functional teams from insights to media to me, and we're all putting it back together. So I don't know how exciting that sounds, but that's what we do. But it creates a very nice curated story, and we can bring that to our chief marketing officer and or CEO, and that's kind of the next step.
Maybe if we could just dial into that note right there, that is, how do you make it simple for a CMO? Like, what do you have a methodology there? Because I think that's the chasm. That, I guess there are two chasms. One is getting executive buy-in and therefore making a simple story. And then the second is translating it to a media manager who then knows what to do with this additional budget that they've been provided, knowing that they are operating with a different set of metrics for optimization.
Yeah, I think sponsorship is key. Sponsorship is key. And so at my previous company, hopefully people forgot where that was. We ran all the marketing mix modeling for 12 brands, but it took a little while to implement it, like almost 2 to 3 years after we're giving them the reports for them to implement it, is because there wasn't a portfolio strategy with moving money between brands. And it just took a little harder. It took a little longer to influence things. Where at Pernod, we knew it was important to, have sponsorship at the top and really about what decisions we're going to make differently. I'm sure you've heard that a lot. So we're very focused on which brands get the most money. So again, a portfolio approach, and that drives like 80% of the benefits, right? So not the touch points. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to invest I'm going to use examples, not real data, but do I do Jameson or Absolute? Well, people are more interested in whiskey than vodka, say, right? Or it's growing. So there's a lot of factors. I have my response curves, plus I have category growth, plus I have profits.
Well, so then I'm going to be seasonality component to that too. That's particular. Like St. Patrick's Day is coming up. It's the whiskey holiday.
Let's do something big.
Right, exactly.
It's big.
Yeah.
So all that comes in.
Category maturate. I know obviously it's alcohol, it's been around forever, but it's one of those things that is still just like new entrants in certain markets, like in the vodka category, like, well, I don't know, tequila category. I'm thinking like all the
Right.
novel, sort of like, new ones that come out there. You're like, okay, this does change the decisions that'll be made. And I guess maybe what I'm getting at here is, and it sounds, if I'm inferring correctly, you perhaps are already wargaming the decisions that you would want to make in advance of providing the readout. And I know that sounds so ridiculously simple, but there are so many times where I see the MMM in search of a problem or in search of a decision that is not sort of calibrated. Is that fair?
Yeah. So I think like we're just very focused on the use cases. So we know we are going to decide which brands get money and how much and why. And then we have a deterministic, I don't know if I'm allowed to use that word, but a deterministic platform that says put in some factors, run scenarios. So we'll run about 20 scenarios each quarter to say which brands get money. That's the first thing. And then second, touch point optimization. So if I move money between touch points, what's the impact on sales? And it'll drive and we're not just media. So, we made a decision like a year ago, to put a lot of money behind earned media. You might have seen some of the St. Patrick's Day Eve promotions. So the model said, yeah, shift the money, even though it's millions of dollars, do that. It makes sense and it'll return. So, so we're very focused, like we're always running scenarios because we're able to do that. And then we report on like the first year, we were able to make, millions of dollars of impact on profit to follow the recommendations of the tool.
That's incredible. Sorry, how did you do the earned media stuff? Sorry that I'm just diving in. I'm just like, this is the earned media decision is the bane of everyone's existence when they're working with an MMM, because they're like, it's not even part of it. It's just there in the ether.
Yeah, so we definitely have earned media, experiential coupons, and then some of the in-store activities. And we're trying to optimize across. Of course, they're in different buckets. So like you look at, if you're doing app pop, that's in a different line item. So it's going to take a lot more change management. So it's not a small team. You're talking about 1,000 people that you have to impact when you move money, say from media to some kind of in-store promotion or the other way around.
Yeah.
So talk to me in 6 months about how that's going. But for now, anything that's app pop, it's pretty easy to move money between earned media and media experiential. Yeah.
Wow. That's a mature point of, or a celestial plane that I think many brands would aspire to. And sorry, I know I'm so diverging from the original agenda.
I want to throw in something nerdy.
Yeah, please.
So I love that you have this focus on shifting money between the brands, because as you pointed out, a lot of the benefit is there. If we can find who's on the steep part of the curve, that we could push them up a little bit and get their sales to go, higher and higher, and who's on the flat part of the curve and having those diminishing returns to ad spend and shift off of those and move them to the active part. I mean, that's brilliant. But on top of that, it's also where the model performs the best. I often see companies through this process where they're trying to get down to such granular movement between, Facebook Reels and Instagram Reels. And you're like, the data, you're slicing the data so thin, you don't actually have a good answer. But we can be very confident about that model at these brand level, when we get up to these sort of higher levels of aggregation. And I think a lot of people I've seen in industry have this intuition that if the model can slice and dice really fine, it's good. And I have like exactly the opposite intuition. If you're slicing and dicing that thin, you're basically making garbage recommendations. But this like aligning at the brand level seems like a great strategy to me.
Although is it sort of like a Goldilocks level here? And I put it out there as that idea of Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, I'm like, that's ridiculous. But there is a very real need to look at top, middle, and bottom, where a lot of brands are perhaps highly reliant on bottom of the funnel activity because they've historically used the model. That is the biggest thing for them, is to say, how do I move money further up the funnel, knowing that there is a much more latent effect size or effect from that, and it's harder to measure. Is that something though that you I guess feel comfortable with? Because I know some brands struggle with that, of just like, no, we can just go channel by channel, not even like within the channel. Like, do you see that level of granularity being functional?
Would you like slice the platform by the level of funnel?
Yeah, so like an upper funnel and a lower funnel in terms of like response scope, because some of it is designed to be grand.
If you cross that with the platform, I'd start to get nervous.
Okay.
But if you kind of like categorize platforms as upper or lower funnel,
Right. Like for like
yeah,
the
absolutely. That
guided by the
seems like a great
taxonomy.
idea.
Yeah, sorry, Jim. You look like you want to jump in.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it depends on how much spend you have in each of those tactics, right? If you have
It
Of
does.
course.
Facebook prospecting is 80% of the budget, and Facebook remarketing is 5% of the budget,
Yeah.
then maybe you don't split them out, right? But there's so many levers and variables that you have to consider. And I thought the paper, the Blue Ribbon panel report, did an incredibly good job, like very detailed, like here's the trade-offs if you go very granular, and here's the trade-offs if you aggregate it too high, like you were saying, Simon, like the Goldilocks zone, right? There was a whole section of like I think it was in the appendix. It was about like, here's the pros and cons if you try to go too granular, whether in geography or in channel or in time granularity, versus here's the cons if you try to roll it up too high. Like there's a lot that there was some stuff in there that I hadn't even really considered.
Yeah, we argued a lot about that appendix. Some people thought it was way too nerdy, and some people thought it was really cool.
I am so glad it was in there. I thought that was like the best part of it. I mean, the rest of it was good too, but like the appendix was where the juice was. Yeah.
But some of the granularity, like if you're talking about Reels or just posts, the platform will optimize on itself, right? So if you buy media the right way, then it doesn't bother me. I can have 40 different things going on, different creative, and the platform will always put it towards the best assets. So if I have 40 assets, probably 3 have 90% of the spend anyway.
And their models are better than yours will ever be because they're aggregating across advertisers. They know more. They just know more.
They know more.
That's a great point.
So I don't need media granularity on, say, Facebook or Pinterest, different kind of things. Where I need the granularity is like, is Hulu worth the squeeze, right? So Hulu versus Peacock versus some of these other CTV platforms. That's what I want to know. And so, yeah, so we have some of that, but then sometimes you need to supplement with that experiential, like with House or Circana, just to see if you can measure it that way. It can be a little too granular for, depending on the brand spend for the models.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, sorry, Jim, I know you had a secondary point of coverage that we wanted to go into, right? No, this is good. Please, Jim, never honestly, Jim and I struggle to keep each other on task because, as you saw from me earlier, being like, I'm just going to go down this rabbit hole for 20 minutes. And Jim's like, God, Simon, you just ruined it. I don't know. That's why I'm here, Jim.
I have to try and find a segue.
Yeah, exactly. I just trying for Jim on his toes. Like, what segue is here? And then when I look at Jim, he doesn't have a segue. I awkwardly then make an introduction and then choreograph my moves like I'm doing right now. But Jim, did you want to keep us back on track?
Yeah, let's see if I can find a segue for that. I think we've been kind of dancing around the topics that between the survey we started off with that, and then I've mentioned the Blue Ribbon panel report that was really good. I know it's only available for members of MSI, which is a shame. If you have any strings that you could pull that they would want to like put it out there as like content for like, give us your email address and we'll give you this report. That'd be great for other people. Well,
maybe just publish the FAQ. Maybe as the team.
Yeah, we could think about that. We should think about that.
It's also not that expensive to join, so we could put a pitch in for joining.
There will be a link in the show notes to the MSI for people who want to get some really amazing content from people in the trenches as well as academia. And both. So yeah, definitely would recommend that.
MSI also does events. So that's another place to show up at, about every 6 months, there's an event that brings together academics and practitioners who are working in a particular area.
Okay. One of the things Jim teased at the very top was media mix modeling, marketing mix modeling. I use them somewhat synonymously. Maybe I shouldn't. What is the difference? Is there a difference? Are we just semantically debating these things? What's the purpose?
So if you think about where MMM came from originally, it really was marketing mix model. And when people built them originally, they thought about all of the 4 Ps. So you guys know the 4 Ps, right? Product, price, place, promotion. And the promotion part is the advertising, but your distribution matters. Your sales are affected by distribution. And as Karen hinted at earlier, your marketing actually interacts with your distribution, right? If you have no distribution, no amount of advertising is going to sell stuff. And And the product matters. So these new product launches can have a big effect on sales. And so the original idea, and this is really championed by Mike Hansens, who's one of the academics involved. If you know the part of News Star that ended up at TransUnion, he helped found Market Share Partners, which was the original company.
Yeah.
And so Mike is always like, everybody gets so into these media mix models, like they even forget that the idea originally was to look at all the 4 Ps. Because all the 4 Ps matter. So we actually, in the report, I think this was cute. Mike came up with it. I think it was Mike. So we use lowercase m, capital M for media mix modeling.
Yes.
And if we use a capital M, that's marketing mix modeling.
I love that. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's a lot more a lot more packages available for media mix modeling, right? So yeah, like House, Robin, like all these platforms, they're all doing media mixes, but it makes it hard to add your other things that are going on. So yeah, for us, I prefer marketing mix modeling, as we've already talked about. But I think like if for people who are just starting, you could start with media, and there's lots of free tools available for you.
And if you fully sell online, then, maybe distribution is less important because you really are everywhere. And maybe you only have one product, so that just doesn't change over time. So you don't have much to learn there. And you're really focused on, if you're a performance marketer for a single product startup that's only selling online, then the little MMM is what you need.
Yeah. And I feel it's like a spectrum, right? Like start with lowercase m, capital F, get your feet wet, kind of get comfortable with it. And then pretty quickly, you're going to see like, this model doesn't seem to be capturing. There's something that happened here where our sales dropped a lot, but our media didn't change a whole lot. What was going on? Oh, we raised our prices. Oh, maybe we should include price in the model. And so you like slowly go from a media mix model and you start to introduce pricing components. And maybe you realize, oh, this competitor really messed with our market, and maybe we should add in some competitor data. And so you should like kind of start moving more towards a full grown marketing mix model.
Yeah, and the real persnickety thing is when you were doing something with the media and say someone else was doing something with the pricing, which happens all the time, right? You do price supports to support the media. Now you've kind of contaminated your marketing. Your media mix models estimates are kind of the combination of the media and the price is what you really measured. And then you go do more media without the price and you don't get that benefit that you predicted you were going to get. So like all of these things ultimately affect sales.
Perfect case in point example. I'm working with a model right now for a client where they basically have 35% off promos about every 2 weeks. And it's like clockwork, right? It's like every 2 weeks, we have 35% off for like somewhere between 5 and 7 days. And during those 5 or 7 days, guess what we do? We also pump up our media to promote those offers, to promote that 35% off sale. It's like, yeah, that's going to be hard to figure that one out because there's, multi-collinearity. Like these things are going together at the same time. We're going to need to like introduce a test to maybe have the sale, but you don't promote it as heavily.
We need to, it's almost like, you were playing with the knobs on your car radio and you don't know which one is the fade and which one is the treble and which one is the bass. So you just decide to turn all of them simultaneously up and then all of them simultaneously down.
Right.
You can't figure it out. Like there's no information in that test. You really need to turn them separately.
I love that analogy.
Is this though not just an inherent construct of the modern world of especially digital media when we're really talking like I think about affiliate a lot in that exists in a lot of different ways, but there are perpetual discounts that always exist. That you watch TV and they're like, oh, it's Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Add something to your cart and you'll get a discount coming. And it's sort of like this you kind of got to price in the fact that there's always on discounts for a lot of brands, even though they're like, peaking and going like I guess it's a is there a way to figure that out? Or is that just like
always on discount?
Volatility? Or it's always on discount if you seek it out, right? So if you go and like search for like the coupon code of like I'm going to buy this thing coupon, and you end up on a Retail Me Not, something like that, and so it is like yes, it's always there, and during periods of like heightened demand, you may have a little pricing volatility, but you've always got these discounts that are just sporadically used. And also the deals that are being provided to those affiliates change over time because their commission structures change over time. And so there are all these like business implications of when they're going to change the discount levels, and also essentially the bounty that's being paid to them will change over time too in periods of like softening demand. So I'm just wondering like how, if that is even a factor that we're thinking about here when we're talking about like the complexities of this scenario, or just, I don't know.
I have not seen this modeled, but maybe Jim has.
Yeah, I think we're going too deep here to sign.
Well, honestly, everything I bring up is from a real world thing that I've recently seen where I'm like, oh God, I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. And then I come to Jim and I go, Jim, help me with this in public when we're on this call. So, it works a lot. I appear very smart to my peers when I go back to work. But no, it's
aren't there some affiliate software that helps you with the optimization and offers and tracking that? I think like from a CPG perspective, we have instant redeemable coupons and mail-in rebates and maybe some Fetch and Ibotta, but that's, say less than 5% of the coupon budget. So we'll be able to tie the face of the value and then look at the volume. And, there's some markets that have more coupons. So we'll be able to see the impact of the coupons and the pricing. And that's all part of the marketing mix modeling as part of the variables that are put in there.
Quite incredible though. Is that sort of the luxury of the scale that you're operating at? Or
yes. Yeah.
That's incredible, the number of variables in play there.
Yeah, so we have an in-house team. They're based in Paris, and they're running all the models. So we're very lucky. Yeah, but also, like, if you work with a good partner, I think they can do that too, as long as the scope is beyond media. So.
Jim is always very hyped on how well Europe is doing relative to the US in terms of their MMM culture and capabilities. So it's not surprising that the team's based in France, because I'm like, yeah, of course they're wizards.
Yeah, but there's lots of out-of-box, like Python offers a few modules that help you get started. And then once, like, it's get the use case, and then there's lots of tools you can use. And then you have the greatest challenge of getting the data into the model, right? So any company, you're going to have fun with that. So
Back to the very first question about what was the biggest challenge marketers face. I was surprised, as you, Ellie, that it wasn't about the data, which is counterintuitive to what I see. That's always the biggest challenge getting started with clients, is like, they say, oh yeah, we have the data. Oh yeah,
the second highest were the data quality and data availability. So they were there.
Yeah.
Consistency was like around 70%, and data of people were saying they have problems with consistency. Remember, everybody's having problems with everything. But data quality and data availability and budget were kind of tied for third place. Budget for measurement systems.
Which it still surprises me that, we're in 2025 now, and the fact that it's still so hard to get the data. Like, I would have guessed that would have been a solved thing by now. Like, the tools exist, the data engineers are out there, there are tools you can, Fivetran or Imprivata or whatever off the shelf to get your data together. But yeah, I guess it's just still something, maybe it's an organizational challenge to coordinate and agree upon the data transformations and get all the data in the same place and make sure it's secure, and you have data stewardship and you have data governance, and I guess all of that just kind of slows things down. But
well, I think back to the episode we have with Chad Sanderson on this, when it's like things downstream and upstream change the nature of the data availability and what's out there. And so there's this, it's not a linear problem. It's not a static problem. And I think that's why it's so hard to wrap your hands around it, is like, yeah, you could solve for this if it didn't change its properties. Like, it's not a physics problem. It's a human problem.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a lot of players. Like, all of the media platforms are constantly changing what they will report.
Exactly.
And there's no standardization. And one of the things I was surprised about this whole process, because I'm a modeler and I usually like deal with my little static database that I look at for 2 years or something like that over and over again, as part of writing research papers. I push really hard to start talking about MMM not as a thing, but as a pipeline or a flow. That to really get this all working, and that flow goes from the data providers into the system. We do the modeling, and then also out to the decision makers. How do we deliver that? And we really want to design these systems not so that they're like an exercise we do once a quarter, but a flow that's happening kind of in a, I think that's a big part of the transformation that's happening is setting them up as flows.
Exactly.
Thinking of ourselves as not as analysts, but as plumbers.
Right. Yeah. We're no longer doing the once or twice a year modeling exercise where by the time you get the results, it's already, 12 months outdated. And it falls into the category of like the paper. One of the things I liked how the paper referenced it, it was, MMM is used for three things. It's scorecards, forecasting, and optimization. And scorecards is basically like retroactive. We're reporting on what happened, right? We're using the MMM to just say like, hey, I spent a lot of money last year. What did I get for it? Versus the forecasting, like, hey, what if I make this change? What do I think would happen? Versus optimizing to say, where should I be spending which amounts and which channels? I don't know if I had a point there, but I was trying to long around way of getting us back to, I think what is sort of the last piece that I wanted to tackle, which was around kind of the purpose of the paper, kind of making awareness of let's all come to baseline understanding of what MMM is, how it's used, and how it can, what are the challenges and what are the innovations there, and where do we see it moving in the future. And that's the one I'm interested in your thoughts there. Where do you see that going? Obviously, I said, it used to be like once every year. And now, like you mentioned, Ellie, it's like, no, this is a pipeline. This is a flow. We want to be doing this monthly, weekly, daily. Do you ever see any use cases of that? I don't know that I would want to go daily, but I don't know. What are you seeing in market in the industry?
You want to start or should I, Karen?
Well, I mean, I'll have an industry perspective. What are you teaching your students?
I'm not teaching my students. I'm learning. This has all been a learning experience for me. But Keith Smith, who's he's the executive director of MSI now, and he kind of puts your solutions. There's a lot more different ways you can set up with MMM now, so you kind of have to make that first choice. So we've got like the legacy firms that have been doing MMM for a long time. That's an option. There are consulting companies that have really good data engineers, actually. Sometimes they're kind of best in class on the data engineering, but they don't really understand marketing or marketing data. So you can go to one of those places. You can in-house it with these open source packages, or you can go with one of the startups that's really doing this as more of a software as a service model. So, in fact, you never even touch the data. They ingest the data directly from your media partners and then make a dashboard that you can look at whenever you want, that's updated weekly or whatever. So there's just a lot more options for people. And it really depends. I wouldn't say any of them seem like the best or like they're going to dominate. I think all of these options will be options for a while because, if you look at a very online retailer, they may already have in-house data scientists and be ready to ramp it up. But through MSI, I was talking to an appliance manufacturer, and they just don't have anyone they were really excited about using Robin. And then I said, so what's your data science team look like? And they're like, I can open a spreadsheet. And I was like, oh, you need a partner.
This is the Meridian problem right here, where I think we're going to see this more and more in the coming years. It is interesting. One of the groups that perhaps you didn't know, or maybe it was like you can go to one of these groups with dating agencies. I work at an agency.
Oh, I didn't mention agencies. I don't trust agencies. That's why I didn't mention them.
So, which is fair, because it's fair to assert, but it is one of those things that I look at and go, there is inherent value in being able to expose what is happening here, but also critically, they have the business context. They know marketing. Like that is and look, I look at this and they say, what is the future of the marketing agency? And I don't think it is pulling levers and platforms so much. I do think it is in the measurement ecosystem. I think it's in measurement and creative calibration as like the future value proposition there. And so, agency is such a broad term too, because you could say like, well, I don't, if you have any influence on the media, I don't trust it. But like, yeah, even some of these like other like just measurement platforms. I'm not saying that House has investments in AppLovin, but some of the things I've been saying recently about like all these AppLovin incrementality tests are really showing everything. I'm like, you are really supporting this platform's
success. Like, you shouldn't have a vested interest in their performance. You should have an agnostic view. This is to say, anyone can have a bias. So I am curious about like what you think about the agency role there.
Yeah, so it's like do you want the fox in the hen house? So that's a good question, right? So I don't want my media agency running the models, and kind of I can get also like when I'm doing sports partnerships, I don't really trust them to do the measurement. I want an objective session. But some of the agencies like Gain Theory, if you've ever worked with them, they're fantastic. They have great, they have a data science team in New York, but also in India. So you can get low cost models. I'm not going to repeat what they charge, but you can get you can get some high skilled models for not a lot of money, and then you need to pipe them the data and get it in a standard format. But yeah, I was going to comment on the role, like how often should we be doing it, right? So I think it needs to be synchronized with the business decisions. So if you're in aluminum manufacturing, you make a decision every 25 years, like where to put the plant.
Exactly.
There might be too long of a window though, Pat, but yeah.
Okay. But like, so we've been doing modeling. We're on our 8th model, and I'm like, the results don't change that much. So we might going back to once a year, because if the results are stable, and the stability reflects like what's happening in the market, right? So again, like retail, you're probably having to do things monthly, especially like what's happening right now. So so I think it's like synchronized to the decisions the industry's making, and then trying to get, like Ellie said, get the data piped in so it's like a frictionless flow of perfect-ish data. And it's really hard to harmonize it. I'm going to go look up those tools. We spend a lot of money swinging data everywhere and validating it. Yeah.
So Karen, even on the newer digital platforms where things can change quickly, like the inventory on a particular display network can change fast.
Yeah.
And be like kind of really crappy inventory. Like it's just like they're showing the ads to no one or something.
Oh yeah.
But you don't see these like kind of discrete shifts where like all of a sudden this particular streaming, over the top channel has bad inventory now.
Right. So those decisions are made with the media agencies. So we have outsourced our media planning and buying. So they're the ones that are going to be.
So they're dealing
with all that, and they're making
you're not like
recommendations.
trying to say this particular display network all of a sudden went south. You're letting you're doing these higher level decisions of like, how do I allocate dollars between the brands?
Yeah, and I'm the media team. They'll be meeting like with our media agency, and they'll be talking about all these problems and how to optimize. And they're using the media buying platforms to help them get the inventory. And sometimes, you have premium inventory, premium audiences. That's mostly what we're talking about, right, on our side, because contextual precision actually works. It's more effective. So costs a little more, but you get the right kind of audience. But our media team does that. But if we had in-source media buying, then of course we'd need a lot more tools and flows, and right. So the optimization process, I think you'd want to do that kind of daily. And there's a lot of
This gets back to your point of like, you need to decide what you're going to decide.
Yeah, decide
and build the model to help that. And so the cadence and everything should just align with that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But I would love to optimize media on a daily basis, but that's not my role. So my role is making brand recommendations. Yeah.
And media platforms also say, don't do that, because you're going to mess with the algorithms in terms of how the delivery mechanisms are working. So it actually is going to be, it'll be a negative gain if you try and modify budgets and stuff on a daily basis. That was interesting though, like, the model, if the models are consistent over time, it may pull that, and like, but the models are consistent until they're not. And that's the hard, like, if you're waiting that long, I do worry that you'll miss the blip when it does shift in that moment. So I guess, is there an argument to try and go
faster,
or with higher velocity? Yeah.
So in the beverage alcohol, like some people might buy, say, Jameson every 2 weeks, but most consumers might buy 2 bottles a year. So the buy rate is slower in alcohol, say, than bubblegum or shampoo.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like things you
Sure.
So beer, they have faster cycles, so you'd want to do the modeling faster.
That makes sense.
And so we're doing the modeling every 6 months, and they've been consistent. And I would like to go quarterly. My team would probably scream because of the data, the cost of data, getting the data to the Paris team. But the Paris team is very fast. They run the models like in once the data's been approved, they're finished in 2 days. And then we get all the model results and validate them. So yeah. So it's a very fast process. It can be a very fast process. The biggest time lag is data management for us.
So Karen, you mentioned like you have your team in Paris that's running the models. I'm assuming that's sort of a homegrown solution that they've developed themselves, not using Robin or maybe PyMC, I don't know.
They're definitely using a few Python modules, and then they've built things around it, right? So
right, like customized it to your specific needs.
Right.
Have you been following along? Have you heard all of the noise about Google open sourcing Meridian and all of that that's finally made? For both of you, Karen and Ellie, where do you see the next, let's say, 3 years in terms of where marketing mix modeling is going? Because we have the open source now from Google with a reasonable player. I mean, they had lightweight MMM before, but that was kind of like, you have Robin from Meta, you have PyMC marketing, which is, not owned by a major tech platform. So you have like, and you talked to this a little bit earlier, Ellie, you have a lot of different options now, whereas before you didn't, right? But now you have open source, you have vendors, you have agencies and consultants. Do you think there's going to be a move towards companies taking this more in-house with some of these open source options? Or do you think it's going to continue to be a fragmented space? And depending on how big you are, if you have a team of data scientists to take it in-house, that's going to dictate.
So Karen probably doesn't have visibility into this. This is one of the weird professor things. Former students call me and say, I'm building an MMM for this tiny little startup. Not tiny, but they're big enough that they could hire me to be their marketing analytics person.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other marketing people. So they're kind of that size. Kids are coming out of school and they can pick one of these packages and get it running and get pretty reasonable looking. Like they call me because they have no expertise and they're like, can you just look at this and make sure I didn't do something really stupid? And they can get going. So I think it's not going to change things for big brands. Like big brands. In fact, one of the things I've been surprised with is I think the legacy as startups kind of push for the more of a software service, you're seeing legacy companies saying, yeah, we can do that too. If that's how you want it delivered, we can do it that way. So I think for the big companies, they'll probably stick with whatever they have that they like. But that these open source packages are going to make it more accessible to much smaller advertisers.
Right.
I mean, there's this sort of inherent flaw or this inverse ceiling though, right? Of just like the spend threshold is always going to be in there. You always have to have a minimum amount of spend or, a minimum amount of revenue, right? So there's always
so when
this
I have
long
these
tail. Do you see it going further down?
Kids, it's often, I say the kids, but you can imagine a young data scientist. Like I took a couple of data science classes as part of my MBA. I'm ready to do this. You have to tell the kids that they have to turn the knob, but they don't have the infrastructure of decision making that Karen is like trying to manage and help.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's a guy in the cubicle over a gal who's in charge of the spend, and they go like, hey, can you turn this up and down for me? And then they can get that variation in the data that they need. And I often am advising them, like, take the budget and spend it all in a week. Take the quarter budget, spend it all in a week, and then we can compare when that was on to off, and we can kind of get things going.
There's an interesting phenomenon here, which I guess velocity modulation maybe would be a framing of this that I think is just how do you bring MMM further down market? Because if there's an inherent flaw or inverse ceiling effect, there'll always be this breakpoint. But if we can bring that all the way down and look for what it's worth, I look at this. Look, maybe there's an AI component of this. I don't know. Do you think there's an AI component here?
Possibly, right? There's also an opening for someone who builds MMMs for lots of small companies in some kind of scalable fashion and pools data across them.
Yeah.
A massive media mix model, maybe.
A massive mini media mix model. It would be for little guys to kind of pool together what they can learn. But I do think an important thing for all marketing mix modeling people is like, change things up. The more you change things up, the better the models will learn. So like
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Right.
that kind of more open to testing things out and seeing how it goes.
And
Absolutely.
I
Evolution.
just I just want to say that if if anyone's listening, I'll have a job opening coming. So follow me on LinkedIn, and
Hey.
I would
Nice.
definitely hire someone who could do this because, like, sometimes I have a smaller brand, they don't spend enough money to measure an MMM, but I want to measure, say, the impact of Absolute at Coachella, and I want to do like a GeoBait lift thing. But I mean, I don't have the resources right now. I don't. As soon as I open a role, I would definitely hire someone who could do the modeling, and that was,
Like
that's
a
my plan.
skunk works,
A skunk
marketing
works.
analytics. You're happy
Yeah.
with your vendors, but I'd also like to have a couple
I'd like
people
to-
in-house to play around.
Yeah, like let's measure out of home, like all kinds of fun things. Yeah, that's what I would love to do, right? So someone running my experiments. But anyway, so I love that those people exist, Ellie. Thank you for training them. So
There's
Awesome.
going to be more and more of them because you can kind of learn how to do this at home. It's
yeah,
you can
exactly.
there's enough tools that you can get going. If you read that Meridian documentation, you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Robin documentation too is good at sort of just explaining MMM and how to think about it. And so Karen, I love that you announced a potential future job opening for our listeners. That's great. If people want to reach out to you for a potential job opening, or Ellie, if they want to reach out with you with questions, where should our listeners get a hold of you guys? LinkedIn, Twitter, where do you
Carrier
My-
pigeon.
I'm
I'm
probably
on
my
LinkedIn and Blue Sky these days. Elea Feit, ELEAFEIT, both. And I also have a website, eleafeit.com, that has a bunch of tutorials that people might find. Like if you really want to roll your own MMM, I have a tutorial on my website that kind of like walks you through the process.
Very cool.
nice.
All right. I'm
So-
going to follow you on Blue Sky.
So I'm on LinkedIn, but my account is shut because I get so many requests for meetings from suppliers. So send me an email at karen.chisholm@pernodricard.com, and you're going to put it in the show notes, right? So I don't mind getting
Yep.
emails. Just put in the title job opening or something, so that I open it. Yeah, I'm open. I love bringing new energy in and fresh, even if you're just like a math person, I'm happy to teach you all the ropes of drinking alcohol. Yeah. So.
Sounds like a dream job.
It does.
It
does.
is.
Very cool.
Excellent. Well, Tim, did you want to? Is there any? Well, I guess we've had many incremental insights today, haven't we?
We
but
a lot. Yeah.
Do we have any additional incremental insights that our folks today would like to share? This is an opportunity to share just any additional, go look at this thing. Although I think we just had a great one from
Yeah,
Elea
there's-
there. But,
Yeah.
If there's anything you're working
Turn the
on,
knob. Turn the knob.
Turn the knobs.
Don't be afraid.
yeah.
Excellent.
But just don't turn all three knobs at the same time.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, your speakers will blow out.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Well, if you are wondering what the future of MMM adoption looks like, and you haven't taken the time to read the Blue Ribbon Report from MSI, then maybe it's time to measure up.